the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, the Kissingers, the Soros, the Blackstones, the Club of 300, the Vatican, the International Freemasonry, which make up what we might call the global elite. Plus all those huge corporations working behind the scenes of the United Nations. There are private individuals who are part of this game. The fourth industrial revolution will lead to a merging of our physical, digital, and biological identities. Once we understand where we are geopolitically, we can understand how the prophetic words anticipated all that and demands from us action in those processes that the world is experiencing. The first premise of the conference is this: we must understand that the kingdoms of this world have not passed into too many hands yet. The kingdoms of this world are still in the hands of man by divine decree. God has given man the responsibility to manage this earth, and it has been done this way for a long period of time. Until we reach the final part of the story, where there is a coalition of kingdoms reflected in the feet of that famous image given by Daniel, and that is the time we are living in now. In that coalition representing important organizations over which man exercises his dominion over this creation, over this earth. And by definition, all these organizations and all these forms of government, be they national, regional, or global, are supposedly, according to HASHEM, responsible for ensuring peace, justice, and security for all the peoples of the earth, to facilitate the progress and development of humanity. All the nations of the earth, of all mankind, respect for human rights, the fundamental freedoms of man, that is what in principle Hassan designated. And today, how is this organized in the modern world we live in? Well, in the modern world we live in, we have the United Nations representing those fingers, those feet, that image. And in the United Nations, there are about 190 member nations gathered together. Member states have to pay a fee to be part of the United Nations and receive the benefits that come from the United Nations in terms of information, protection, etc. Of course, other UN members, depending on their area, have to make specific contributions. Where do states get this? Look how this works. Member states have to pay a fee to the United Nations. Spain, for example, has to pay a membership fee to belong to the United Nations and receive its benefits. Where does Spain get the money to pay this fee? Where does Spain get it? Where does Italy get it? Where does the United States get it? Where do UN members get the money to pay their fees? From taxes. From the taxes the state collects. And who pays those taxes? We do, the workers, those of us who work, we pay taxes, and from those taxes, a portion must be given by each member country to the United Nations. Are you with me so far? Okay? That means the United Nations is paid by us. And the one who pays is the boss, or not? Who is the boss? The one who receives the salary or the one who pays the salary? The one who pays is the boss. When you look at the United Nations, don't see something that controls you. The mindset we in the light heavens have to have is completely different. The United Nations is there to serve our interests. That's why we pay them. When you see a police officer on the street, don't be afraid of them. That officer is paid by us to protect us. They are not our bosses, they are our servers. How much do you understand what we are doing? We need to be well educated in this. Next time you see a police officer and talk to them, ask, are you being paid well, officer, or do you need me to request a raise for you? You'll see how they'll just laugh in your face. Don't be afraid of the police officer. Unless you're doing something wrong, the police officer is our friend, our server to care for and protect us, and therefore deserves our respect, our consideration, but they are our public servants. How much do you understand what we are talking about? That's very, very important, right? Very important. Now, due to the United Nations needing a lot to sustain the entire administrative apparatus of the United Nations, the members' fees aren't enough. It doesn't cover it. And then that's where other organizations come in, NGOs, companies, families, people who contribute money, powerful corporations who contribute monies. And is the one who contributes money the one who calls the shots or not? So these incredibly powerful organizations are the ones operating behind the United Nations. We don't see them, but they are the ones pulling the strings behind the UN, such as, for instance, the World Bank. Like the International Monetary Fund, which makes big contributions to the United Nations, they are a hierarchy of extraordinarily powerful individuals, institutions that have access to information we do not have. They have access to projects we don't have. They have high-tech resources that we don't possess. And it's precisely these technologies they use to control. It's a sort of invisible own form of government. They operate in the shadows and form what we might call the globalist world elite. This is where the Rothschilds operate, the Rockefellers, the Kissingers, the Orrs, the Blackstains, the Club of 300, the Vatican, International Freemasonry. Believe it or not, this is where the Association of International Sorcerers operates. And this is where the 65 most powerful families in the world operate. On top of all these huge corporations, behind the scenes at the United Nations, there are private individuals who are part of this game, who wield massive influence. This is where Bill Gates operates. This is where Bezos operates. This is where Mark Zuckerberg plays his role. Larry Ellison, for example, Elon Musk, for example. People are scared of Elon Musk because he has thousands of satellites that can bring down any government's internet connections whenever he wants. So you have to be careful how you handle Elon Musk because of the technological influence his company has. So imagine that's the way we are living. That's the reality we grew up with. And among the most powerful forces in the world is the World Economic Forum. The World Economic Forum. A World Economic Forum, by its initials in English, it's a non-profit international organization. It's very interesting.
Yes, we're going to be okay with it.
Non-profit. It's one of the organizations that amasses the most money in the world and doesn't pay taxes. Created in 1971 by Klaus Schwab, as a Swiss economist, university professor, a very intelligent man. Supposedly, this forum is dedicated to fostering public-private cooperation to address challenges, supposedly economic, social, technological, and environmental, most pressing at a global level. This forum meets every year in Davos, Switzerland, and that's why it's also known as the Davos Forum. World leaders, businessmen, academics, civil society leaders, and other big players gather every year to discuss, to collaborate on a wide range of global topics. Of course, from there come initiatives, programs, events for the whole world throughout the year. This includes publishing research reports from regional thematic organizations, promoting assistance between the public and private sectors to address global challenges like climate change, poverty, inequality, technological innovations, global governance. This forum doesn't arise from a democratic election by the United Nations, mind you. No one elected them. They've established themselves through their economic power. It's a private initiative by a group of people and organizations with great economic power in their hands, who seek, of course, to protect the Comodoro del Lugar. We won't waste time here discussing why I believe the forum's influence is disproportionate, or why I think their agenda lacks transparency and legitimacy. But whether we like it or not, that forum is there. It's one of the most important components of the New World Order, and its agenda for global solutions affects each of our lives, the life of each one of us, of each of our families, and due to their massive influence, the control they have over social media, communication networks, the influence they have in the pharmaceutical industry, in the world's forest resources, has led them to aim for what they consider a new world order to save the planet. It's clear now that the United Nations and its complex organizations dance to the music played by these hidden musicians, this global elite that runs things behind the United Nations. All this has been brewing since 1945, since the First World War, the Second World War, etc. These are planned events. The United Nations is just the tip of the iceberg. We are told it was created to maintain world peace, to prevent any nation from dominating another, and to solve disputes through the principles of law, order in international courts, avoiding violence. Avoid wars, protect human life on earth. We're told they were created to promote human rights, respect for each one of us, regardless of race, gender, culture, or religion. All this sounds very beautiful, but we have to think about this. What can you expect from this enormous global organization with all its agencies, with all its components, invisible to the public opinion, with so much binding and imposing power over us, that among its hidden partners has the World Association of Warlocks, Freemasonry, and other secret organizations that are full of paganism and connections with the occult? What can you expect from that? They hold political power that we don't have. They have resources and financial ties that we don't have. They have access to sensitive information that we don't have. They have control capabilities at a regional and global level that we don't have. That's exactly why they have created what is called Agenda 2030, which is part of a partial project towards a new world order, which is precisely what inspired us to share these prophetic ideas, these prophetic exchanges with you in the context of this event. Basically, what Agenda 2030 does is promise a system of sustainable development for the entire world, eliminating hunger and poverty and bringing an era of equality and global unification. Who doesn't like that? If someone comes to you with a sustainable development plan, look at how nice it sounds. Sustainable development to eliminate hunger, to eliminate poverty. Who wouldn't want that? To bring an era of equality for all, global unification for everyone. Who wouldn't want that? I'll read to you without going into detail the proposals of the 2030 agenda. 1, end world poverty. 2, fight against poverty. 3, establish a global health system. 4, ensure equal education for all. 5, ensure gender equality. Look how nice. Ensure gender equality. Provide clean water for everyone. 7, ensure sustainable access to the same energy sources for everyone. Promote economic development and employment for all people. Is anyone here unemployed? Good news. The 2030 agenda says everyone will have a job. What a wonder, right? Everyone will have a job. Okay. When I read these things and learn about these matters, I remember a professor I had at university. He always used the analogy of the mouse and the cheese. I mean, the mouse is hungry, right? It's hungry. But where do they put the cheese to satisfy hunger? And what happens when you eat the free cheese they give you? What happens after you eat the free cheese they give you? The little door falls. Really, the little door falls. Agreed? Provide sustainable infrastructure and industrialization for all nations. Reduce inequality among nations. Ensure safety in every city around the world. No crooks allowed. Using Venezuelan slang. Manage the production and consumption trend of goods. Listen well, worldwide. Isn't it nice? Manage the production and consumption trend of goods. Now ask yourself, why did Dutch farmers take to the streets with their tractors? Why? 13, reduce the impact of climate change on the world. 14, restore and promote the sustainable use of our ecosystem. 15, promote just societies and global access to justice. 16, revitalize international partnerships for the sustainable development of the nation. Those are the 16 goals. Logically, these are the 16 chapters of the book, right? Then you have to read each chapter and you'll discover what's in each one. Who among us could disagree with such a wonderful proposal upon hearing this? It looks like the garden from Oeho. It looks like the garden from Oeho. I don't know if you all have heard the song of Bolshevism, the Bolsheviks, when they won over Russia and kicked out the Tsars. That song made its way to Cuba, and they made us sing it in school, in the university, was students, right? no more supreme saviors, no Caesar, no bourgeois, no God, that we will achieve our own redemption. That's the slogan. No more supreme saviors, no Caesar, no bourgeois, no God. We will achieve our own redemption. Who could differ from such a wonderful redemption that they are presenting to us here? Of course, we all agree with that. We are ready to support this proposal, but before supporting it, before giving our vote, we want certain things explained to us. For instance, what does a just society mean to you? Explain a little bit. What does global access to justice mean to you? What do you mean? What justice are you talking about? So, in the eyes of the general public, these proposals look very nice, very valid, very sensitive, but for those of us with classified information coming from our prophetic books, far from being romantic, this proposal is satanic. You just have to read the chapters with their explanations to understand what these statements mean. But here is the point, and that is, we cannot understand the prophecy if we don't realize the geopolitical events happening around the world that the prophecy is announcing. Because if you don't understand the prophecy, you won't understand why these things are happening. And if you understand these things are happening, but you don't have the prophetic basis, you can't connect one thing with the other, and you are vulnerable. So if we want to trace the prophecy, we have to watch how it unfolds before our very eyes. Everything that is happening right now, the Voice Forum, which is what interests us the most for Europe, it is still going to take time over there. Reaching Latin America, that's going to take time. But you, here in Europe, are the first ones who are going to feel the impact of this. The Davos Forum promotes, for example, the concept of the Fourth Industrial Revolution. I read the entire book by Mr. Swaps about the Fourth Industrial Revolution, the Great Reset, third, the Great Narrative, and of course, the famous phrase from the Davos Forum, you'll own nothing and you'll be happy. That's what's coming here to Europe. Europe is going to be first. Yes, the first. There are 2 or 3 laboratories in the world for years now of you'll own nothing and you'll be happy, and it seems it's not working well for some reasons, so they're going to try it here in Europe, better than what they've been testing in Cuba. Why do you think Cuba is untouchable? Just 90 miles from the most powerful country in the world, Cuba can't be touched, because Cuba is a geopolitical laboratory. It's a lab to see what happens when no one owns anything, to see if they really are happy. So far it's shown they're not owners of anything, but they're not happy. It was tried in North Korea. They own nothing and they are not happy either. It was tried in China. They own nothing and they are not happy. It was tried in Cuba. They're not owners of anything and they're not happy. It's being pushed in Venezuela. They don't own anything, but they're not happy. The same in Nicaragua. So now the big test, with everything they've learned in those countries, is coming here to you, to Europe. I think everyone has seen the face of the author Klaus Schwab, the great visionary, the one promoting who will guide our world towards a prosperous future. But what does it really mean? We're not talking about something far away from us. We're talking about something just around the corner. 6 more years, and you'll wake up in a totally different world than the one you now know in Europe. Just 6 more little years. A world where your property, your identity, your monies will be totally controlled by the system of government proposed by the Davos Forum, the World Economic Forum. Interesting how all these people who were not elected by anyone are trying to influence the politics of the whole world to transform the planet I live on for one reason only. Do they have the money to buy the United Nations and make them operate according to what they think is going to save the world? I am going to give you three pillars on which this vision of the 2030 agenda is founded, with Western Europe as its immediate framework for action. See it there. First, surveillance. That's the first thing, surveillance. The first pillar of the 2030 agenda, total surveillance of each and every one of us. The way the World Economic Forum can achieve this is by demanding a new form of identification. The World Economic Forum suggests that all the people on the planet, starting with Europe, have a new form of digital identification. Digital, which one is it? Who are you? How do you prove who you are? You go to the bank, open a bank account. Who are you? Are you going to buy a plane ticket? Who are you? Are you traveling from one country to another? Who are you? Even buying a train ticket today, show me your ID, your identification, and then you take it out. It could be your passport, your driver's license. It could be the state-issued document for... The identity card is called that, right? The identity card. It shows you, check that the rice matches the face, right? So, okay, you say, here is your ticket, here you go, okay. Now that's going to end. Identification will no longer be through a passport. It won't be through an identity card. It will be digital identification, which, according to them, will help promote a world of inclusion where everyone can access basic services. And of course, that form of identification will be linked to absolutely everything you do in your life. You'll need it to book airplane tickets. You'll need it to buy a train ticket. Okay, everything, of course, being digital, they can track where you go, what you do, and where you are. This digital ID will be necessary to access all your daily life accounts.
Social media, the internet, bank accounts, even how you spend your money. Without your digital ID, you can't buy or sell anything. Does that phrase sound familiar? That you can't buy or sell anything without your digital ID. And who will control the digital ID and the data it contains? Of course, the government. The government will do that. And who does the government answer to? The United Nations. And who do the United Nations answer to? Those behind the United Nations. But think about it. You're going to wake up in 6 years. You'll wake up in a distant world society just 6 years from now, where all modern actions in your life will be tracked, controlled, and supervised by this personal digital ID. Through it, they'll know all your online habits, all your online habits. Where do you go? What do you buy? What do you want? What do you say? Which political figure do you identify with? Who are you voting for? Logically, this raises a question. Where are you going to carry that new form of digital identification? Where are you going to carry it? Are you going to make a card? What will you have? Are you going to make a ring? Where are you going to carry it? According to the Voice Forum, you will carry it inside your body. Inside your body. In his book, if you haven't read it, I recommend you read it. In his book, The Fourth Industrial Revolution, Schwab talks a lot about how RFID can be used to identify you, track your belongings, track all the purchases you make, and that arrive at your house from anywhere in the world, which will allow our economy to become much more efficient. But in reference to that same technology, let me quote something he says in the book. He says, in the near future, similar monitoring systems will also be applied to the movement and tracking of people. In other words, just like all the packages sent by mail in the world are tracked, and they know where the suitcases we send on the plane below are, that sometimes get left behind, they track them, they know in which airport they are, because they have codes, they will also track us. He says the following, and I quote from his book, "The Fourth Industrial Revolution will lead to a fusion of our physical, digital, and biological identities." Echoing all this, electronic implants will become a normal part of life in Europe.